Do you want to tell us a bit about your background and upbringing? Because looking at it, it seems like you've done a lot in your life and had a lot of changes and been all over the place, all over the world.
Yeah, well, I was born in London, and then we went via Brighton. We were brought up in East Anglia, really. So I suppose I'd consider East Anglia sort of where I was brought up. Um, but being a teenager, I couldn't actually wait to leave the rural background, rural, you know,
Mm.
backwater, and left as soon as I could. Basically, went to college and then went to London, and I worked in sales, exhibition sales. I actually got my first job the day of the hurricane, which was in the 80s. I'm showing my age now. And I was staying with my sister. I went down to the tube. I'd worked all my journey out because I was a real bumpkin. Got down to the tube and there was no tube. So I had to get 5 different buses to this place called New Point Publishing, or No Point Publishing, as we used to like to call it. And when I got there was a tree had fallen over the front door. I was 5 hours late. I hitched my next suit up. You know, you only had one suit. I hitched it up,
Yeah,
climbed over the tree, and got the job because I was the only person who turned up, basically. So I kind of fell into
tenacity.
sales. Well, my parents said, you're not slopping around here. You've got to go and get a job. So I did sales in London. I worked for EMAT, worked for ages, and then just had a kind of mid-20s crisis and decided that I hated sales. And I bought a ticket to China with my best friend, and we went backpacking around China.
Wow.
Couple of, honestly, we were terrible. Lost our passports on the first day. Um, Traveled all around Southeast Asia, came back, fell back into sales, hated it again, and then retrained as a social worker and a was a social worker in children and families, and then I was a probation officer doing cognitive behavioural group work with offenders, and I supervised them in the community. Um, Loved that job, but it was really hard work, really long hours,
Mm.
and had another crisis and went. There's this kind of theme with me. Whenever anything gets tough, I just run away. So then I went travelling around South America on my own, which was scary, and did that for 6 months, and then came back and got a job with Bernardo's in their corporate fundraising team. So yeah, been all over the place, done loads of stuff.
That's amazing. What made you pick China when you first went there? Was it just a random decision or?
Don't know really. I was just so desperate to not be in sales anymore because it was so boring, and
Mm.
I just I don't know. I just thought it's a long way away. It's big, it's a really cool place. So yeah, I went to China. Didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
You know, I went with my best friend, who's a nurse, and yeah, we had a lot of fun. But we were very fortunate that we met. Um, we were sitting in Beijing train station, and we met two Californians because my leaving hat was an Oakland A's baseball cap, which was cool in the 80s. It had an A on it, and they thought we were Oakland A's supporters, so they came and talked to us. They were Chinese Americans. One spoke Cantonese, one spoke Mandarin, and we travelled. They were really cool from California. We travelled with them right across China. So we used to just hire bikes and go out and talk to all the locals. It was amazing. We were so lucky to meet them. It was amazing.
Fantastic. And I guess that's all like pre-phone, pre-internet. So
Oh
it's
God,
literally you have a map and some cash
yeah,
and that's it. And your wits and that's all you've got to survive.
exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Right. Well, let's delve into the questions then, because I'm very interested to ask you the first one because it sounds like you've done lots of brave things. But can you pinpoint a moment in your life that you consider to be your bravest?
Yeah, I found this quite a difficult question to answer because I think it's about the definition of bravery. It's like everyone goes, "Oh, you've had cancer and you've had chemo, you're so brave." But I don't think you are because you don't have a choice. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
It's like there's that picture, and I
yeah.
wish I'd drawn it myself, but I haven't, of a rock with like a plant coming out that's all withered. They're saying, "Oh, you're so brave." It's like, well, you just are where you are, and you can't really be anything but cope with it. I think it was much braver making the decision to tell the kids I had cancer because they were very young then. And I was such a baby. We took them to rugby, we took them for McDonald's. And then in the end, we just had to sit them down and tell them. that mum had cancer, and I've got twins, and they, they're identical twins, and they completely, had different reactions, and
Hmm.
that was very difficult. That was quite brave, because a lot of people don't tell their kids, but mum's going to lose her hair. You've got to be brave from the first, really. But
Yeah.
I was laughing to myself when I worked at EMAP in London. I worked on this show called The Education Show, and it was a new launch, and I was doing the sales on it. And we didn't have emails then. I sent out a letter to all the kind of educational suppliers, and I spelled education wrong, and I had to go and tell my boss. And it
Oh
still gives
no.
me a cold sweat. That I remember going in and going, oh my God.
Haunted.
Yeah, haunted. So
Haunted.
that was a brave moment as well. But I think, I think that bravery is something that is when you're scared and you do it anyway. So kind of putting yourself out your comfort zone, you know, going traveling on my own, that was quite scary, because I'm not very organized. I lose everything and I'm all over the place. And the first time I was in Peru, I was in Lima, and I went out. I was on a bus, and I thought, right, I'll try and talk to people in Spanish, but I didn't know any Spanish, so all I know was hola. And I was on this bus, and this bloke kept talking to me, woo, 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 and I just went, hola, hola. And then he just got all flustered and went off the bus. And the woman in front of me turned round and she said, do you know what he was saying to you? And I said, no. He was saying, give me your money. He was trying to rob me.
And you're like, hello, hello,
Oh.
rob me.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's my definition, really. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, well, I think it is. It is really interesting because obviously I've asked this a lot now on the people that I've had on the podcast, and it is, I guess, how you determine it yourself. And I think a lot of people don't consider themselves brave and don't consider what they've done brave. And then when I've asked them this question, they've looked back and gone, "Well, that probably was actually quite brave, actually." But as you say, with your diagnosis, it's kind of the fate you're handed, isn't it? And then
It
you've just
is.
got to
It is.
deal with it.
And I think in terms of anyone who's going through breast cancer will know that you don't just turn up and they say you've got breast cancer. You have tests and you've got to wait for them. And that waiting is the worst thing in the world. Once you've got your diagnosis, you're sort of in control. But that unknown,
Mm.
like I had spread in my lymph nodes, and then I had to have an MRI scan to see if it had, gone everywhere. And I mean, that was really scary. But I remember going to have the scan and just bawling. There was all these bikers in there, and there was me just in the corner like a gibbering wreck. So that wasn't me being brave. That was me having to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's what I think, really.
It is that is very tough. I've had two
Oh, have
scares
you?
myself. Yeah, one I went and they did all the full biopsy and everything, and that seemed. And then the second time, I was very much like, oh well, it'll just be the same as the first time. But then they took ages to come back in, and I was like, then your mind starts
Yeah,
going, doesn't it? And you're like, oh, what if this isn't
yeah.
just what I think it is, and it's going to be easy? And my sister's had breast
Oh
cancer as
gosh,
well,
yeah.
and hers had spread, but it was in COVID, so she had to do everything on her own. Like she couldn't take her husband in or anything,
No, that must have been
and I
really
think
tough.
that must have been really tough for her. But yeah, but I guess people don't know how they're going to feel until it happens to them.
No, and sometimes I think it hits you later. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll go, I went and I had to have a mastectomy, and they said we'll have to remove the breast. They're really kind of whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Then I went out and I was just like a gibbering wreck. It hits you at different times, I think. So you can't say in the moment that you're being brave, because I don't think you cognitively take it on board. So if you haven't taken it
Yeah,
on board, you can't be brave. Do you know what I mean? So it's
yeah, yeah.
complex. It's really complex.
So, at what point did you take the decision that you were going to have your podcast and come at this from perhaps a different angle to how other people might have approached it?
Well, it was funny because when I was going through chemo, um, I was absolutely fine with them saying you're going to lose your hair and your eyebrows and all that. I was absolutely fine with that. But they said that you might get a thing called chemo brain, where you it's like being pregnant, you walk upstairs and can't remember why you're upstairs, sort of thing. And I was just like, no, I am not getting chemo brain. So I'd always wanted to write a book. So I wrote a novel while I was having chemo. Um, and I'd always been planning to do it, but you never do you? Everyone says, oh, they're going to write a book and they never do. And I thought, right, well, I've got all this time off work. I'm sitting in corridors. I'm doing this. I'm going to write it. So sorry, there's somebody in the background. When I actually had written the book, I then met Estelle, who's from Talk Publishing, and we got chatting about breast cancer. And that was like after I'd kind of got my hair back. And I just remember thinking, when I was going through it, I found all the kind of, oh, I'm so sorry you've got breast cancer. And, everyone's so kind of, it's all so sad and you're a victim and all that. And it just does your head in because you just want to like
Mm.
have a laugh. And I kind of tried to write a book, which is Stay on the Bus, to write a kind of irreverent guide for people like me that doesn't want to kind of delve into all the kind of internet stuff about breast cancer, but just wants to know the information, have a bit of a laugh about it, very light. So I wrote the book, and then me and Estelle were chatting on the phone and saying all these really funny things that had happened, outrageous things. And I said, oh, I think we should do a podcast. And Estelle, being Estelle, said, right, let's do it. So we just did it, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We just we kind of found our voice as we're going along. But I'm sure there's several of them that are really awful, but we've just kept going. And the podcast is all about normalizing the word cancer, because if you can laugh about cancer, it takes that power away. So it's about kind of helping people talk about it, really, because your friends and family don't know how to approach you. It's a massive thing, and the word cancer is very
Mm.
emotive. So if you can laugh about things that happen and terrible things that happen to you when, things with your bald head. And we had an anchor whose wig blew off in the middle of a report on a hurricane in America, and just things like that. Other people might be really stressed, but if you can laugh about it, it really it really helps. And it's a bit of a community for people as well, because there's lots of podcasts and Instagram groups all about help and support and all that kind of technical stuff, but we're not doctors. It's all about just having a laugh. So that's why we decided to do it, to try and help people through just not taking everything so seriously, and realizing you're not alone. So I hope that answered the question. That was a bit all over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
place.
no, because it's really because I think my mum got diagnosed with cancer when I was
Oh
16,
gosh.
but I kind of vividly remember that, and still to this day, I think she spent the whole time never actually saying the word
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah.
So they call it the big C,
Yeah.
or and even now she won't ever say it, and it was quite surprising. And I think there's such a big thing around it, and we're just so awkward about talking about these
Yeah.
things, aren't we?
And also breasts,
And
So we've got the
yeah,
double whammy. We've got to talk about breasts and cancer. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
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 we just, I went through a stage of just taking pictures of cakes with cherries on top and putting them on Instagram, and you know, just stupid things like that, really. But hopefully, it's helped a few people, and we have had a lot of feedback that it has. So we're just trogging on with it, really. So, and I think we've just about managed a year now, so we're getting a lot more letters in and things. So yeah, we're going to keep
yeah.
going.
That's that's really good. Yeah.